No DQ Galaxy, we are live with a special WrestleMania 40 post-event edition of No DQ&A video. Shout out to everybody watching this, whether it's live or on demand. And I guess, as Matthew points out here, so No DQ Galaxy, what do you want to talk about? A lot going on, a busy week in the world of WWE and AEW. I have some questions that were emailed in. Also, feel free to super chat a question. That would be very much appreciated. And the super chats will get top priority. I will go to those right away if you send in a super chat. But for now, let's get started. The first question tonight comes from Caleb Jacobs, longtime No DQ viewer from Oregon. I met him once, very nice guy. Caleb sent in this question about Cody Rhodes. As we know, Cody Rhodes is the new WWE Undisputed Universal Champion. And Caleb asked, how long should the Cody Rhodes title reign be? He thinks it needs to last at least until Survivor Series. I think Cody definitely needs to have a lengthy run as champion, coming off the historic Roman Reigns championship run. He does not need to be champion for 4 years. I will say that. I would say at least until SummerSlam. I think it depends on where WWE is going for WrestleMania. Could it be a scenario where Cody Rhodes defends the world title against The Rock at WrestleMania? Are they going to wait until WrestleMania to do that match with The Rock? If they're doing it sooner, if it's not going to be at WrestleMania, then one could argue that maybe The Rock should get the title from Cody Rhodes at SummerSlam. I don't know about Cody dropping the title at Survivor Series because it just seems like a random event, even though Survivor Series is technically one of the big four. It hasn't felt that way in a while. I would rather see Cody drop the title at a stadium event. If it's not The Rock, then who? Could it potentially be somebody like Gunther at Bash in Berlin? It's hard to say because we don't know what the landscape is going to be 6 months from now. Will The Rock come back? Will he not? Will somebody else suddenly get really hot and WWE decides to go with them? Will Cody become involved in a massive storyline with somebody who is not even really on our radar right now, somebody who gets really hot or gets into a feud with Cody and it draws a lot of interest? So many things could happen, but I would say at the absolute soonest, SummerSlam, probably not Survivor Series unless, again, you have a really great scenario for him to drop the title. And what about the Royal Rumble? Royal Rumble could always be a possibility if Rock is unavailable and they want to do Rock versus Roman Reigns for the championship. They could always have Cody drop the title at the Rumble. It's tough to say right now. I do think he needs a good run as champion, though, at the very least until SummerSlam. So thank you for that question, Caleb. And now we'll move on to the next question, which was sent via email by Matthew. Matthew sent in this question and he said, hey, Aaron, I had to think on this one for a bit. Wasn't sure if I should ask about AEW or WrestleMania, so I picked Mania. You've said WrestleMania 40 is the best Mania of all time, so I have to ask, what was the best match of the card for you, and where does it rank against matches like Steve Austin and Bret Hart, Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, and Hogan and Rock? All considered some of the best matches in WrestleMania history. That's a great question, Matthew. I did say I think WrestleMania 40 is the all-time greatest WrestleMania. And the best match of WrestleMania 40, I would say, is Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns. It's tough to put it in a certain spot because part of my criteria for judging matches is the overall impact that it makes on the industry. Steve Austin versus Bret Hart, I have that so high, not just because it was a great match, but because of what it did for Steve Austin and how Steve Austin's rise to become WWE's top babyface was what I would say the biggest game changer in wrestling history. Cody winning the title, is it going to be that impactful? I mean, Cody winning the title was massive. WWE business is absolutely on fire right now, and I think they put so much thought into this story, so it's up there. I might put it ahead of Undertaker and Shawn Michaels in terms of the story. Undertaker and Shawn Michaels was more about the match. They're different in that regard. Hogan and Rock was also its own beast. Hogan and Rock was about nostalgia and a real dream match scenario. Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns was really the guy who was dominating the company for several years versus the guy trying to take his title and end his run. Every match had its own story, and they were all a little bit different from each other. But the whole package of Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns, I would say it's for sure top 10 WWE matches of all time. So thank you for that question, Matthew. I would definitely put it up there among the greatest matches of all time. We do have some super chats. Thank you guys for your super chats. I very much appreciate them. Son sent in a $5 super chat. He was just on the No DQ review this week. Great guy from Chicago. Says, what's your ranking from least to best of the quadruple Drew McIntyre versus Seth Rollins feud? Money in the Bank 2020, Crown Jewel 2023, Raw Day 1 2024, and WrestleMania 40. I'd say the pandemic match would be the bottom. Now, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but was this the match where Seth lost and then came out all depressed on Raw the next night? Like, he had the dad body going at that time, and he ended up just taking out his frustrations on Rey Mysterio and gouging his eye with the steel steps. I believe that's what happened after that match. It was the pandemic, so that's easily the bottom. And then probably Crown Jewel. It did plant the seeds for their feud. And then Raw Day 1, to me, is what really set up the Drew McIntyre heel turn. And then, of course, WrestleMania 40 would be the peak. So really, I go with what you put in order. WrestleMania 40, definitely the best because it was the climax of the feud. And we got Drew finally winning the title, only for Damian Priest to take it away from him. So thank you for that, son. Again, I very much appreciate the super chat. Shout out to TJS, Tyler Joseph Smith. Longtime No DQ viewer and contributor from Arkansas, says, if you could have dinner with anybody in the business, alive or dead, who? Where would you go, and what question would you ask them? They must tell the truth. That's the key right there, TJS. If they have to be 100% honest, and they can't lie, if they have the Jim Carrey curse where their child prays to God that their father cannot tell a lie, Hulk Hogan would be my guy, because I would love to hear Hulk Hogan tell the truth about everything in his wrestling career. Vince McMahon would be my second pick, just to hear all of Vince's stories. Actually, I think I would go Vince over Steve, or not Steve. Steve Austin would be up there too. But I think Vince would be my number one, and then Hulk Hogan, and then maybe Steve Austin, just to hear all of Steve Austin's stories in his wrestling career. But Vince, to hear everything that went on behind the scenes in WWE and what he was thinking. And where would we go? I think we would go to Texas de Brazil, go to the steakhouse and have all the different meats, have all the great food that they have at the Brazilian steakhouse. I think that's where we would go. And Vince would be the number one guy, in my opinion. That's a unique question, TJS, so thank you for that. Hulk Hogan would have a heart attack if he couldn't lie. Nick B sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Nick B. Says, who will lose their title first, Cody Rhodes or Damian Priest? I think it's going to be Damian Priest. I predict, I'm saying it right now, I think Cody Rhodes will be champion until at least SummerSlam. Damian Priest will probably lose it at Clash at the Castle. My gut feeling is Drew McIntyre coming in, getting revenge on Priest for what happened at WrestleMania. It will be Drew McIntyre beating Damian Priest in Scotland, in Drew's home country, to regain that World Heavyweight Championship. Thank you for that, Nick B. That was a bit of an easy one, but thank you nonetheless. Walter Cruz, Rage of Wrestling. Walter from the Northeast, I believe Connecticut, but I could be wrong on that. I know he's in that general area. Your guess to what The Rock gave Cody Rhodes on the Raw after Mania? Well, if I had to guess, it would probably either be that watch that Cody Rhodes mentioned, the watch that Dusty Rhodes had that was pawned, and then Nick Khan and Triple H got it back for Cody. Somebody had an interesting idea that it would be a lighter, and The Rock would basically imply that he set Cody Rhodes's bus on fire. But I feel like it's got to be one of those two things. I don't know what else it could possibly be. Somebody had joked that it was a Black Adam ticket. I don't know if that's it, but yeah, it wouldn't shock me if it's the watch. Mr. Tito sent in a non-wrestling question, so I'll have to turn it into a wrestling question. Thoughts on O.J. Simpson's passing? Well, I was never a fan, not a football guy, so indifferent in that regard, and we all know O.J. Simpson's history, so I have no opinion on it one way or another. I will say it was funny when WWE did that parody of O.J. Simpson with Roddy Piper, the backlot brawl at WrestleMania 12, and Piper got in the white Ford Bronco, and they used the O.J. Simpson police chase footage, and they were chasing him. I guess we'll never find out who did it now, unless there's some secret last will or message that O.J. Simpson left, and we'll find out. Otherwise, he took that answer to the grave. But other than being curious about that, I have no opinion of O.J. Simpson. So there you go. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you, Psycho Jet Black, longtime contributor here on No DQ, always chiming in. And he's always got a comedy question. He says, hey, Baron, have you seen 3 from Hell? Still haven't seen it, and quit bugging me about it. Otherwise, I'm never going to see it. If I keep getting nagged about it, it ain't going to happen. But thank you for the super chat. All right, Styles Clash 619 sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Early predictions for the 2025 Royal Rumble winners. I got 2, and it may be a little early for them. But again, it is early. It's April. We still have, 8 months, 9 months until Royal Rumble season. My 2 picks, if everything works out for them and they get hot and their momentum builds, Braun Breaker for the men and Jade Cargill for the women. And some might say, well, what about them for Money in the Bank? I think that might be too soon. But if Braun Breaker's their guy, maybe January, Royal Rumble time, they pull the trigger on him. But I could also see in the Triple H era, Triple H may take it slow and play the long game with both of them. If it was the Vince McMahon era, Vince might be like, we got to push the new guy now, whether people like it or not. We're not going to worry about potential backlash. You know, the whole John Cena, Roman Reigns thing with Braun Breaker, shoving them down people's throats. With Triple H, he's probably going to go with what organically is the best choice. Will that be Braun Breaker or Jade Cargill? That remains to be seen. I've noticed some comments in the chat room about maybe Tiffany Stratton, if she continues to develop as a character and makes a connection with the fans. Here's a couple of suggestions for Money in the Bank. Tiffany Stratton and LA Knight. Don't think it's going to be LA Knight. They're probably going to go with a younger candidate, a younger wrestler with a lot more years ahead. So if it's not Braun Breaker, could it be Gunther? Could it be Roman Reigns taking a long absence and coming back and winning the Royal Rumble? You never know. You really don't. Other than the names I mentioned, it's hard to say who it might be at this point. All right, we got another email question here from the Cleaver, Colin Andrew. Colin sent in this question. He says, what segment crapped the bed more? WCW's announcement of Mick Foley winning the WWF title, or Tony Schiavone and the Young Bucks showing the footage from England, AEW All In? Much love from Colin Andrew. It's tough to say because we don't know the long-term impact of this CM Punk Jack Perry footage being shown on AEW Dynamite. The WCW announcement of Mick Foley winning the title, you know, the whole finger poke of doom, I don't think that was as bad for business that it gets credit for in history. It was obviously counterproductive and it backfired on WCW. I would say that was worse because a lot of people turned off Nitro and turned on Raw when that happened. Here, I think the possible negative repercussions for this would be that AEW is further alienating their already existing fan base. But we don't know to what degree. We know that the people that do not like AEW have been having a field day with this stuff that happened on AEW Dynamite. They're just going to town. How many diehard AEW fans did this potentially turn off? Again, that remains to be seen. We'll have to see what the numbers are like. We'll have to see if Dynasty does any worse than usual as far as pay-per-view numbers go. We'll have to look at their attendance. I don't think it helped, but did it hurt a lot? It's hard to say. So I would say the WCW segment, just because it did cause people to tune out and change the channel over to Monday Night Raw. And you know, that was a critical moment in the Monday Night War. This was just bad decision-making by Tony Khan when it was pretty clear going in that it wasn't a good idea. I mean, people were saying, why are you even doing this days before it aired? And, you know, they once they announced it, they had to go through with it. But thank you for that, Colin. Mr. Tito sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Tito. Another non-wrestling question. I'll answer it quickly. Which is better, Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul? I personally would go with Breaking Bad, but Better Call Saul is like right there. I mean, it's like an A++ and an A+. I mean, both shows are phenomenal, and to me, it's all part of the same universe. In some ways, Better Call Saul is better. In some ways, Breaking Bad is better. But they each are both S-tier television shows. So it's like asking me to pick between my favorite pizza or my favorite fried chicken sandwich. You know, they're both phenomenal. So thank you for that, Mr. Tito. I appreciate it. Check out both shows if you haven't already. Just got to say. All right, moving on here. Sun sent in an email question, so we'll get to this one. Feel free to super chat a question. Remember, it takes priority if you send in a super chat. Sun sent in this question regarding Bianca Belair. Here's another ranking. And no TJS, bad TJS with this comment. Chick-fil-A, most overrated chicken restaurant ever. Most overrated restaurant, period. Their chicken is very lackluster, in my opinion. Popeyes is levels above Chick-fil-A. Every time I've had Chick-fil-A, it's been mediocre. So, might be an unpopular opinion, but so be it. All right, Son. So, Bianca Belair is 4-0. She's got a little bit of an Undertaker streak going here. Says, what's your ranking from least to best of her 4 main card matches? WrestleMania 37 versus Sasha, WrestleMania 38 versus Becky Lynch, WrestleMania 39 versus Asuka, and then WrestleMania 40, Jade Cargill and Naomi as her teammates against Damage Control. I would put WrestleMania 40 at the bottom because it is a 6-woman match. It's not a title match. It was a bit of a downgrade for Bianca after having very high-profile matches. That would be my bottom. It was a solid match for what it was, but let's face it, it was to establish Jade Cargill. Then I would put the Asuka match. I'm probably going to go backwards on this one. The Asuka match was good. Becky Lynch would be next. That was a really good match at WrestleMania 38. Enjoyed that one. I think I would go with the Sasha matches number 1 because they got to be in the main event spot of WrestleMania. That was as high profile as you can get. Huge match for both of them. Big feel-good moment to close out the show. They made history in that one. But the Becky Lynch match is close. Like, I would put those two neck and neck with each other. Even though the Becky match was not the main event, I still think they put on one of the best matches of that WrestleMania. So thank you for that, Son. We do have some super chats here, so I will get to those. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Psycho says, what will WWE do with the Bloodline on SmackDown? There have been rumors about Jacob Fatu coming in, so I wonder if we'll see an attempt to rehab the Bloodline without Roman Reigns, because where do you go with Jimmy Uso and Solo Sikoa and Paul Heyman? What's next for those guys? You know, maybe they bring in Jacob Fatu and try to build a new Bloodline, just like when Shawn Michaels lost to Steve Austin at WrestleMania 14, and then the next night Triple H said it was a new era of DX and brought in some new people for the group, the DX Army. Maybe that's what they do here. Maybe they have to get some new blood in the Bloodline. And I know I keep saying this. I wish Naomi would be in the Bloodline, but don't see it happening. I could see Jacob Fatu, though, coming in and becoming a new member, and they restore the Bloodline with some new people. Maybe they even bring in another person. Who knows? Mr. Tito sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Mr. Tito. Check out his columns. He's been on a roll. with columns on NoDQ.com. He always has an opinion, whether anybody wants to hear it or not. Mr. Tito will tell you what's on his mind. And he said, what was more unfair? Punk fired attacking Jack? That was, in a way, unfair because CM Punk. Oh, here, he clarified what he meant. More unfair, Punk fired or attacking Jack. Well, I think Punk fired was probably unfair because they should have just done it sooner. After the 2022 Brawl Out incident, that should have been the end of CM Punk. You know, you get in that kind of fight backstage. It was clear Punk was on the outs with the Elite. I think keeping him around and trying to keep it going was probably unfair to him. Let him get out, you know, and go back to WWE sooner, do whatever he wanted to do, and quit wasting everybody's time. Jack, you know, Jack Perry, I do not justify Punk's actions for getting physical with Jack Perry, but I mean, Jack Perry did provoke him, and he did the whole real glass thing, making that comment. And yeah, if I was CM Punk, I would want to know what's up. And, you know, we still don't know exactly what was said between them. But yeah, CM Punk did put his hands on Perry, and that was wrong. But Perry should have been ready, you know, knowing CM Punk's history, knowing that the guy is a hothead. You know what you're getting. You know what you're getting yourself into. So thank you for that, Mr. Tito. I appreciate it. And Michael sent in a $2 super chat, another non-wrestling comment. Most overrated restaurant is In-N-Out or Chipotle. I don't eat at Chipotle, so no opinion on that place. I do agree about In-N-Out, though. In-N-Out would be the second most overrated chain after Chick-fil-A. In-N-Out's good, but the lines that they have for it, I think they're all right, but not worth the time you have to wait to get the food. They're fine, though. They're fine. I like Shake Shack better, though. If I was going to get a fast food like burger, I would go Shake Shack 100 times over In-N-Out. 100% of the time. Another question here from Michael. This time a wrestling question, so now we can talk about wrestling. Will Rhea Ripley versus Bianca Belair headline a WrestleMania in the future? Depends on what WWE has lined up for WrestleMania. I think the odds are against it. The only reason I feel that Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair got their WrestleMania main event is because, number one, WrestleMania was two nights. And the second was that it was during the pandemic. And other than the Bloodline, like a lot of the storylines were not that intriguing. So that year, it was a good opportunity to give the women a main event spot. And they decided to have Bobby Lashley retain his title over Drew McIntyre. So they didn't pull the trigger on the title change, and thus, why put that in the main event spot? Let's give it to the women. The only way I see it happening is if there's a good opportunity, like if they don't have a men's feud that's really hot for one night, or if they somehow have a story with Rhea and Bianca that is just absolute fire and it's a game changer and it's moving numbers. Probably not. I would say the odds are against it happening, unfortunately, because I think that they would have a great match. I just feel like they're just gonna most of the time focus on the men's storylines, and that's just how it's gonna be. Styles Clash 619 sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. Says, more likely to win the WWE title again, AJ Styles or Finn Balor? Hard question to answer because I really don't think it will be either of them. I would say Styles is maybe a little bit more likely since he seems to be close to retirement, and maybe they'll want to give him one final run before he goes. I just don't see it happening with Finn Balor. I think Finn Balor has kind of settled in this mid-card role, and really Styles has too, which is why I would say neither of them. Both of them are kind of past their peak in a way. You know, AJ Styles is pushing 50. He's bulky right now. He's jacked up. He's not really doing all the crazy stuff he was doing when he was younger. And Finn Balor, you know, he's got his role. But, you know, they could have pulled the trigger on him last year in that storyline with Seth Rollins, and they did not do it. And I don't know if there'll be a better opportunity than what they had last year. So I would say Styles, but I think both are probably unlikely. Thank you for the super chat. And we got one more here from Psycho Jet Black. You guys can still super chat questions if you want. Psycho Jet Black sent in $5. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Says, seriously, what's the difference between unclean, unfair, clean, and fair? Also, to quote Squidward from SpongeBob SquarePants, it's unfair, not fun fair. I would say that a clean win is when you have no outside interference. And thus, you could argue that Cody Rhodes did not win clean at WrestleMania. Did he win fair? That's also debatable because, as Mr. Tito and Virtue pointed out, John Cena did give Roman Reigns the attitude adjustment. So did that shift the balance to make it unfair? The Bloodline rules, I mean, Cody Rhodes did agree to it, and they lost on night one. So one could argue, hey, that's what Cody Rhodes signed up for. It was a no DQ, anything goes match. Now, of course, Bloodline had people interfering first. So you could say at that point, it was fair game. Fair game, the key word there. Clean would usually mean just a straight up match. But I mean, everybody's got their own definition of it. I would just say a fair fight is when, you know, the deck is not stacked against any one person. And it was obviously stacked against Cody, but then Cody had his Avengers come out to help him. And then it became fair. And then you could argue, well, maybe it shifted a little bit too much. But look what we've done with that talk from the No DQ review. It's crazy. Hamp Connell sent in a $5 super chat. No question, I guess, but maybe he wants me to just talk about it, so I guess I'll do that. He said, today in 1999, Diamond Dallas Page wins his first World Heavyweight title at WCW Spring Stampede. He would become a three-time world champion. I feel bad for DDP because he had so much momentum in 1998, you know, teaming up with Karl Malone, teaming up with Jay Leno. He had what was maybe the best match of Goldberg's career at Halloween Havoc. Then they turned him. He came back to WCW and they turned him, and I think they really damaged his drawing power. There was no good reason to turn him heel, and I feel bad because by the time he won the title, WCW was on the way down, and I feel like his title run was flat. They had Sting beat him in one of the best WCW matches of all time at the Fargo Dome, only for DDP to win it back the same night, and people were pissed about that. I think DDP should have gotten a run as champion when he was at his peak as a babyface. He did win it in 2020, but or not 2020, 2000. He won it in 2000, and well, it was 2000. So by that point, it was really too late for anybody to win that title and be any kind of a difference maker. All right, we got one more question here from Justin R. Justin R. sent in this question, said, today AEW announced that Wrestle Dream 2024 will be in Tacoma, Washington, leading to a lot of people, myself including, believing that that's where Danielson will end his full-time wrestling career. If we only have 6 months left, who do you want to see him wrestle before he hangs up his boots? And he mentioned several Japanese wrestlers. I have no interest in any of them, with all due respect. And then he said maybe the third match in the Zack Sabre Jr. trilogy. I know it's a great match with those guys, but I really don't care about that one either. This is a hard one for me to answer because I'm trying to think, who hasn't he wrestled in AEW that I would like to see him go up against? He's got the match coming up with Will Ospreay at Dynasty, and that's one of the few dream matches left, but who else in AEW has he not had a match with? And what would be a dream match with the guys that are currently regulars on AEW television? Maybe Swerve Strickland? I'm trying to remember who he faced and who he hasn't faced. I don't know if I want to see him face a former WWE guy because he faced all of them at some point. I mean, he faced Adam Copeland in WWE. He faced Chris Jericho in WWE. So I'm not really sure who's left for him to face. Maybe Zack Sabre Jr. will be his last opponent at this point. Chat room, throw me a name. Somebody in AEW who's a regular who you think would be a suitable final opponent for Bryan Danielson. Because I'm kind of stumped on that one, Justin. I don't know, like, for me personally, who I think would be a good choice. And you also have AEW All In at Wembley Stadium, and you would think that they would put Bryan Danielson in a big marquee match there too. We'll get back to that if somebody can throw me a good name. Of course, Psycho Jet Black is like El Dandy, so that's going nowhere. All right, Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Psycho Jet Black. Says, what are your predictions for night 1 and night 2 main events of WrestleMania 41? It's so early to tell. It's either going to be Cody Rhodes versus The Rock or Roman Reigns versus The Rock. I would expect The Rock to be in one of those main events for WrestleMania 41. And as far as the women go, we talked about Rhea Ripley versus Bianca Belair. Maybe Bianca Belair versus Jade Cargill. Maybe Cody Rhodes versus the Royal Rumble winner. Man, that's tough to answer because we are so far out from WrestleMania. I'd like to see Braun Breaker in a high-profile match, but I don't know if he'll be at that level yet. Maybe Cody Rhodes versus Braun Breaker. I don't know. Other than I think The Rock will be in one of the matches. That's pretty much all I got at this point. But thank you for that, Psycho Jet Black. I appreciate that one. Oh, here's one I didn't think of. Kenny Omega. They had that match that went to a draw. One more time, Bryan Danielson versus Kenny Omega. I think that's a great choice, whether it's at AEW All In or Wrestle Dream. I think one of those matches or one of those nights would be a great opportunity to do one more match with them. Quite frankly, I think that there's better choices in WWE if Bryan is going to wrap up his career. I'd love to see Bryan Danielson versus Cody Rhodes or Daniel Bryan versus Cody Rhodes in WWE. I'd love to see Daniel Bryan versus Drew McIntyre after Drew McIntyre's been on this run. I'd like to see Daniel Bryan versus The Rock if Daniel Bryan came back. That would be a lot of fun. There's several possibilities. I do think we might see Daniel Bryan back in WWE one day. I would not be surprised if that happens. All right, got another $5 super chat here from Sun Goshiku. Thank you for that, Sun. I appreciate it. Says, who do you consider the greatest male and female WWE stars to make a comeback from main event to low card and then back to main event? Ooh, that's a tough question to answer. Like who had a really hot start and then kind of fell off and then got hot again? Chris Jericho is the first guy I can think of because towards the end, actually, this happened to Jericho more than once. Remember his first run in WWE? He won the world title. Then he kind of became the ass cream guy. And then he came back and then fought Cena for the title and then left. Came back, was kind of in the middle again. Then he turned heel, got hot again. Then he fell back down the card, then went up again, then fell down, went to AEW, became world champion, fell down, went up. I mean, Jericho always seems to be able to bounce back from any position. So I think Jericho would be my choice for the men. For the women, I mean, probably Charlotte Flair at this point because she's another one. She's had all these world title runs, but then, for a while, she's not doing much of anything. She kind of just is there, and then she's thrusted back into the main event. And, some people like it, some people hate it. But Charlotte seems to be another one that can do the mid-card stuff if that's what they need, or if they need her for the main event, they can use her name and get her right back in there on top. James mentioned Bayley for the women. She's a good choice. Bryan Danielson, I just talked about him. He's another great choice for the men, as far as he was upper card, then doing tag stuff, then upper card again, kind of going back and forth. In AEW, same thing. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Psycho. I appreciate it. Psycho says, do you think Triple H will downplay big wrestlers who can't really wrestle like Omos in favor of those who can wrestle like Bronson Reed and Braun Strowman? They've already downplayed Omos. Omos basically shows up for a battle royal. He still does the house show, so, the people in the crowd can ooh and ah at his size. But other than that, they really have no long-term plans for the guy. Bronson Reed is a Triple H guy. Bronson Reed was brought back right away when Triple H got control of creative. And so was Braun Strowman. Braun Strowman, I definitely think that he will be utilized. And he's another guy that we really haven't talked about since he's been out of action due to injury. But he could be in the running for one of these big programs, whether it's with Cody Rhodes or with Drew McIntyre or Damian Priest. Maybe even into WrestleMania season, Braun Strowman might get a new push. But I think Triple H will focus on the guys that are organically over with the fans. I don't think he's going to shove a guy that doesn't really make a connection with the audience down people's throats. I think those days are probably over as far as that goes. That was a Vince thing where Vince saw this giant, and even if the giant wasn't that good, Vince loves giants and would push the guy and would always have a role for that guy. And then when he's done pushing that guy as a serious contender, then that guy becomes a comedy figure, starts dancing or whatever stupid thing they got going on with the wrestler at the time. Jason XP sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Says, who on the main roster should go to NXT? It already happened. Karrion Kross's group. Like, they were doing absolutely nothing for a while, and then they got Kross with AOP, then they lost at WrestleMania, and now they're in NXT, which is probably the best spot for them. really, it's a good idea for any wrestler that doesn't have a key role on the show to be sent down to NXT. Just give them a change of environment. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, like, who haven't they utilized too much? I think Nikki Cross would be a good choice. She's doing nothing right now. She made a cameo during WrestleMania weekend, but they have not utilized her at all. She could really benefit from some kind of a reset and just changing things up with her. I saw in the chat room, Dave is a Beastly mentioned Maxine Dupree. I mean, she's probably a good choice. She's been entertaining with Alpha Academy. Maybe you send Otis back. I know Otis has been entertaining, but he seems to be lost in the shuffle right now. You could always send Ivar back. I mean, to Triple H's credit, they've done a lot with Ivar, with his partner being out of action. But right now, maybe they could send Ivar back until his partner Eric is ready to return and then reintroduce the Viking Raiders. So that's something you could do. The Real Wyatt sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Says, will Brock Lesnar and Bobby Lashley ever finish their feud? Shaking my head. I don't think so. I don't think they're bringing back Brock Lesnar anytime soon, although Triple H claims that Brock Lesnar is still with the company and Brock is just doing Brock things, whatever that means. I guess that means Brock is having fun shooting animals and getting on top of his wife. I don't know what else he's doing besides those two things. But I think it's over. And I don't know how many years Bobby Lashley has left. He's getting up there too. He's pushing 50. But I'd like to see Brock back at some point to maybe have a match with Gunther. He could always challenge Cody Rhodes for one more match. But other than that, I don't know what else Brock Lesnar can do. I really don't think we're going to see Brock Lesnar versus Bobby Lashley again, though. I think that ran its course. It had its time. I'm glad they at least got some matches, because for the longest time, we're like, why are they not booking Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar? Like, it seemed like a no-brainer, and for the longest time, it never happened. And then they finally did it, and maybe overdid it, if anything. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. Says, should AEW try to get Scott D'Amore more for creative? Oh, we just said Scott D'Amore. I missed the apostrophe. I don't think they need him. And this might be a controversial take, but if he was lighting the world on fire so much in TNA, why wasn't TNA's numbers higher? Now, I get it. He was trying to get them on a higher platform, and apparently they didn't want to do it. If anything, maybe AEW could benefit from Scott D'Amore. I think they need somebody, going back to earlier with the Dynamite episode, airing that All In footage. And I think it might be time for Tony Khan to consider bringing in some new people to run creative and just shake things up a little bit. Scott D'Amore might be a good fit for AEW, just so we have a new face in there and give the show a little bit of a different vibe. Because even though AEW has their following and they have their audience, like, it needs to evolve. At some point, you have to evolve if you want to stay in business. If you want to build your audience, you got to change things up and take some chances. Styles Clash 619 sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. Says, why do you think we never saw Batista versus Brock Lesnar? I think it just came down to timing. If Brock Lesnar had stayed in WWE instead of leaving in 2004, I think we almost certainly would have seen Batista versus Brock Lesnar as a WrestleMania main event. But Brock left, and by the time he came back, Batista had already left for Hollywood, and Batista came back for that little short run. and it just didn't work out. Batista was basically done by the end of that Blue Tista run in 2014. He came back for the one more match for Triple H, and that was it. So it was just timing. Didn't work out, unfortunately. Would have been a hell of a match. Psycho Jetpack sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. Says, can Triple H get Baron Corbin over on the main roster? They might. If Baron Corbin is just Baron Corbin and not Constable Corbin or King Corbin or Happy Corbin, he's got a shot. Maybe it would be a good idea for Corbin to be aligned with Braun Breaker, and they can do the War Dogs thing on the main roster, or the Wolf Dogs, excuse me. That could help out Baron Corbin, perhaps. I don't think it would hurt Braun Breaker necessarily. People like the Wolf Dogs, and might be a good way to reintroduce Baron Corbin. If anybody can do it, it's Triple H. And if Triple H can't do it, then there's just no hope for Baron Corbin. But people are liking what he's doing in NXT, so I think there's a chance for him. All right, we got this one from Hamp Connell. He says, list a dream team of creative that can revive AEW. The number one guy is the guy they're probably never going to get, and that's Paul Heyman. Heyman would be the guy to bring in. Beyond that, I really don't know, because the guys that are at the top of their game are in WWE right now, and Tony Khan's doing his thing. Like I said, you got Scott D'Amore as a possibility, but yeah, not much else. I don't follow the independent wrestling scene enough to know what's really clicking right now, so I can't really say oh, this guy that runs this promotion would be a good choice. I do think at some point you do need some new blood. As great as Paul Heyman is, and with the experience he has, that's great, but you also need somebody whose finger is on the pulse and understands pop culture and can make a connection with younger audience members out there. And Paul Heyman probably still has a pretty good idea, but he is getting up there. Ideally, you would want a mix of somebody with experience plus somebody who's youthful and knows what young people want in wrestling these days. Thank you for that, Hamp. We got one more here from Tiger, who sent in a €2 super chat. Says, name one Vinceism you liked. Local medical facility. I mean, I liked a lot of stuff that Vince did. I think that Vince knew how to produce a great spectacle. I will say that about Vince. And one thing I liked about Vince is that he would not force wrestlers to do something that he would not do himself. Even when Shawn Michaels came down for that WrestleMania 12 entrance, Vince did it first. Remember Rob Gronk, whatever his name is? He didn't want to jump off the platform, so Vince demonstrated it and did it because Gronk was afraid to do it. So that's a Vince thing. Vince doing whatever he was asking people to do. That was something he was known for. And I respect that. I respect that Vince would be willing to do that. And Vince would be willing to humiliate himself. People always say that Vince would humiliate wrestlers and make them go out there. Remember, this is a guy that went on national television and pissed his pants for the sake of the Steve Austin angle. I respect that. He did have balls the size of grapefruits in some ways, going out there and, getting hit with a bedpan in his underwear. Vince would humiliate himself. Yeah, he humiliated others, but he would go out there and do it himself for the sake of entertainment. So I guess if I had to name something about Vince that he was known for, it would be that. So thank you for that, Tiger. And on that note, we're about at the hour here, so I will go ahead and wrap up this edition of No DQ&A video. Thank you all so much for tuning in tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. We have one more stream to close out the 13 straight nights of live streaming. Friday night SmackDown recap, post WrestleMania. Make sure you guys tune in for that, and then I'll have a nice little weekend off, and then we're back on Monday, or no, we're back on Sunday. So I literally have one day off. Then we're back on Sunday with No DQ review, and then we get back to our regular schedule with Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown, and then we got Dynasty and predictions. So really, I got like one night off, and then it's back to like a full week's of work. But that's how it goes here on the No DQ channel. I appreciate everyone tuning in tonight. Thank you for your viewership and support. And hopefully I'll be back with another No DQ&A video in a month or so. I'm going to try to do once a month. And no, Psycho Jet Black, I will not buy an Ox Baker t-shirt. I'm still traumatized by that. I might actually buy a Rift Aronson shirt before I buy an Ox Baker shirt. But thank you for that, Psycho Jet Black. I appreciate it. And in case you guys don't know what he was talking about, that's me. And there's Ox Baker in the background. And imagine a little baby seeing that scary dude on your wall. How would you react? Thank you all. Much love. Much appreciation. Say yes to No DQ. Buy a No DQ shirt. Forget about Ox Baker. Buy a No DQ shirt at nodq.com/merch. Say yes to No DQ. And I will see you all next time.